Right now we will reflect on SD 51.6, Dukkha Sanyojana Sutta. Now this word Sanyojana can also be spelled as Sangyojana. In fact, Sangyojana seems to be easier to pronounce than Sanyojana. This is a kind of Pali sound system. Yeah? The two discourse on the fetters. Sangyojana is the fetters. Fetters are whatever holds us back in this world. This is from A 2.6. The theme is what holds us to suffering, what frees us from suffering. So here, this is a short sutta where the Buddha speaks of the two kinds of fetters. Let's look at them. The translation is on page 50. Bhikshus, there are these two states or two truths, two dharmas. What are the two? The contemplation of gratification in states that fetter, and the contemplation of revulsion in states that fetter. So here the Buddha is talking about one right action and one wrong action. The wrong action is to see what are the satisfaction or apparent satisfaction you think you can get from sensual desire, sensual pleasures, for example. Those are states that fetter. And then the second line, the contemplation of revulsion in states that fetter, means you reflect on the true nature of those fetters like sensual desire, and then in that way you can free yourself from them. Section 2. Bhikshus, one who dwells contemplating the gratification in states that fetter, does not abandon lust, does not abandon hate, does not abandon delusion. Right? So these are the three unwholesome roots. So here, in a way, you can say the Buddha is saying that anything that is rooted in greed, hate, delusion will fetter you. So if you reflect on those things that which hold you to it without freeing you, those are fetters. So if you reflect on how nice these things are and you do not let go of them, then you're caught in it. Another way of looking at this is the first training, the first of the three trainings. That's the part in colloquial term we say, learn to say no. Okay? In other words, if we ask ourselves what is the Buddhist training in colloquial terms, the first training is to say no. The second training is to say yes. And the third training is to remain silent, calm and peaceful. To say no means basically the 5 precepts. No to killing, no to stealing, no to sexual misconduct, no to lying, no to intoxication. And then you say yes to mental peace, to the various stages of jhana. So that is saying yes. Yes to all the good actions you can do. Okay? And then when wisdom arises, you feel happy and peaceful. And then your task is done. So it's the silence of completion. So here the Buddha is telling us, do not dwell on how craving will satisfy you, things that you get caught up with it. Don't dwell on hatred, revenge, violence, you get caught up with it. Don't think about negative things, things which will confuse you, worrying, that will fetter you. Section 3. Without abandoning lust, without abandoning hate, without abandoning delusion, one is not fully freed from birth, decay, death, from sorrow, lamentation, physical pain, mental pain, and despair. One is not fully freed from suffering, I say. Now, this list of things, birth, decay, death, sorrow, lamentation, physical pain, mental pain, despair, this is a very old formula of suffering. So, here the Buddha says we have to let go of greed, let go of hatred, let go of delusion. In simple terms, to let go of greed basically is to know where to stop, to know when to stop, right? As lay people especially, we can enjoy lots of sensual pleasures within limits. Even as a stream winner, you can enjoy sensual pleasures within limits, within the spirit of the 5 precepts. The spirit here means you know when to stop, you know when enough is enough. It's not always easy, so you train yourself. For example, in terms of food, the Buddha advises us, or advises the monk, to stop eating before you feel full. Of course, that is not, as you know from practice, not something easy. It's quite difficult, right? So basically, that is why the monks eat very slowly. So if someone asks why do the monks eat very slowly, they want to know that moment before they feel full. So you kind of more or less know, okay, I'm getting near there now. It's like you're filling up your gas tank, you're looking at the meter in the car, you can see the meter rising slowly. So you can't, if so you eat slowly, you can feel that. But as lay people, you know, we tend to eat faster than the monks, so it's more difficult for us to know that. So, in other words, we're at the right time, we have to learn to eat more slowly, more mindfully. Then you can know when to stop before you feel full. This is called moderation in food. And why is moderation in food such a big deal? Well, it helps us to keep more awake, to practice, and keep us healthy. We don't need so much food, especially if we are doing long meditations for over many days on retreats. And it keeps us light and buoyant and healthy. So this is one example how a renunciant lives a healthy life. Right, so then in the closing section, section 4, the Buddha continues, says, Bhikshus, one who dwells contemplating the revulsion in states that fetter, abandons loss, abandons hate, abandons delusion. So here notice the Buddha says contemplate revulsion. God, this is a very strong word here. I follow the advice of the forest monks. They say, well, nibbida is revulsion, so what's wrong with translating such a word? Other scholars and more scholarly or worldly teachers, they say, oh, we should not use this word. Revulsion is too strong. It's such an ugly word. Well, the point is, pain is ugly. This Achancha, this forest monk, he is quite blunt here. He says, what's wrong with the word delusion? I mean, if it is dung, it will smell just as bad. So you can't give a nicer word to dung. It's smelly. So something is painful, so you should be revulsed at it. Again, here you have to understand, revulsed doesn't mean to hate something. It is never to be fooled again by this kind of state. For example, we know that gambling is bad. I mean, we have lost a lot of money. We should not try again. I mean, if you try again, you're going to lose some more. You may win one more time and then you're going to lose 10 more times. Or a more dramatic example, you see fire, right? I mean, this is the wonderful thing about a human child, even a human child is very intelligent. The first time he puts his hand into the fire, it burns and he will cry, and then he will never do it again. So too, when we know something will hurt us, we may be hurt once, but we will never do it again. We will never put our hand into the fire again. So that's because we are revulsed at this. We are not going to do it. Nothing will make us do it. That's one way of putting it. So we should be revulsed at greed, revulsed at hatred, revulsed at delusion, because we know the dangers of it. That's the meaning here. So the Buddha is trying to use the most powerful word possible to tell us not to get caught up in Mara's net, not to be caught up in this trap, in other words. Section 5, having abandoned loss, having abandoned hate, having abandoned delusion, one is fully freed from birth, decay, death, from sorrow, lamentation, mental pain, physical pain, despair. One is fully freed from suffering, I say. These bhikshus are the two states or two truths. So there you are. Here the Buddha is reminding us, number one, what not to get caught up with, and what to do about it. Right. So basically, avoid the negative mental states, cultivate the positive mental states. You can see here, I mean, you have this Tripitaka, the suttas, the sutta collection. The teachings always come back to some basic idea, and yet the Buddha could combine this teaching in so many ways. Even now, I'm working on volume 53B, 53 part 2. I'm working on a number of short suttas from the Anguttara, the Sangyutta, and I discovered that many of these suttas, they are interconnected, 2 or 3 of them. And currently I'm working what are called mirrored suttas. Mirrored suttas are kind of divided almost exactly in half. So the first half, the introduction, will talk about some negative state to be avoided. And then the second half will talk about what should be done. They mirror each other. And then there are also suttas that mirror each other. For example, in volume 53b, you have the Vacchagotta Moggallana Sutta and the Moggallana Vacchagotta Sutta. You notice the names are just reversed here. So in the first, Vacchagotta goes to Moggallana first and then asks Moggallana the 10 questions. Moggallana say, well, the Buddha doesn't answer, he doesn't deal with this because it's not connected with the spiritual life. And then Vacchagotta goes to the Buddha next and asks the same question. And the Buddha gives the same exact answer. And Vacchagotta is amazed. So this is the first mirrored sutta. And then another sutta, the next sutta, you have the Vacchagotta Moggallana Sutta. So this is where the Vacchagotta goes to the Buddha first and asks the same 10 questions. I mean, his favorite questions always the same, the 10 questions. And this time the Buddha answers differently from how Moggallana answers. And then Vacchagotta goes to, in the second half, he goes to Moggallana, asks the same question, and Moggallana replies in the exact same way as the Buddha did. And again, Vacchagotta is amazed. So here you notice the suttas mirror each other by way of two teachers teaching the exact same thing. So we see here simple teachings inspire you, help you to stay on track. You reflect on them. So studying the suttas is not accumulation of knowledge. Some people have a very wrong or bad attitude saying, oh, I've already read this sutta, so I should not read it again. It's enough. They're treating suttas like newspapers. You read the news, oh, it's old news, I'm not going to read it again, and you throw it away, or use it for wrapping fish or rubbish. But suttas are different. Suttas are there, you read it, Every time you read it, something happens to you. It clears your mind, it brightens your heart. And then you find, when you read it again, at a higher level, a deeper level of understanding, you feel joyful. It's like listening to music. So you don't say, oh, I've read this before, it's boring. Not at all. Instead you say, I've read this before. It's such a joy to see an old friend, to see this wonderful teaching again, because now you understand it better. And the suttas speak to you of your own experience this time. So this is the difference between the suttas. So when you see the suttas, you feel very happy. So do study the suttas in that spirit. Let us now close with a short reflection. The suttas are there to remind us to walk the path, to be inquisitive, to learn, to practice, to change, and to be happy, and to inspire others. And if you can do this, then the suttas have really served their purpose, and you have preserved the Buddha's teaching. Reflecting in this way is wonderful good karma. By the power of this karma, may we be blessed with courage and wisdom to aspire to at least stream winning in this life itself. And may we be well and happy meantime to study, practice and realize the Buddha's teaching. By the same token, by the power of the three jewels, may our families and loved ones and friends and those who are practicing the Dhamma to be well and happy and see the true teaching in this life itself. And by the power of the three jewels, to may those who have lost their way or have difficulties to return to the true path and see the true teaching for themselves in this life itself. May all beings be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.